And then a few months later, he was in an iron lung after a car accident. It was tough.
Des O'Connor was a household name across 44 countries.
I'm going to bring somebody on now, a great mate of mine, who's no stranger to your television screens or the Palladium stage. Des O'Connor! Whoa!
But he took one massive secret to the grave that his wife has only now decided to share.
He was the kindest, funniest, and loving man, and I feel very blessed that I have shared my life with him for the past 30 years. He was my best friend and soulmate.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Many suspected he was dealing with a decline in health, but the specific nature of his illness was a guarded mystery until this moment. Jodie Brooke Wilson confirmed that for years, the man who made millions laugh was privately wrestling with a devastating neurological disorder. This is not just about the end of a career, but about the incredible strength it took to keep the show going while the curtain was slowly falling. Private pain of British legend. The world of entertainment was rocked when the news finally broke regarding the health of Des O'Connor. For over half a century, he had been a beacon of light on British television, known for his tanned skin, bright smile, and effortless charm. But here's the catch. While the public saw a man who seemed to defy age, his wife, Jodie Brooke Wilson, she was holding on to a secret that was eating away at their private life. Des had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease back in 2017, but he made a firm decision to keep that information locked away from the world. It's not that simple, though, because keeping a secret that big requires a level of acting that goes beyond anything he ever did on a stage. He didn't want the headlines to be about his tremors or his physical decline, or he wanted them to stay focused on the jokes and the music. And get this. The crazy part is that Des actually noticed the first signs of trouble as far back as 2012. He was performing in a theater production of The Wizard of Oz at the London Palladium, playing the role of the wizard himself. During a scene where he had to fly in a hot air balloon, he looked down and noticed a distinct tremor in his hand. Most people would have rushed to a doctor immediately, but Des was old school. He brushed it off as nerves, or perhaps just the cold air of the theater. What most people don't realize is that he managed to hide these growing symptoms for another 5 years before the doctors officially gave him the news. So, here's the deal. By the time he was diagnosed at 85 years old, the disease had already started its slow march through his system. Jodie explained that he absolutely refused to be seen as a victim, and he told her he wanted to keep taking the tablets and keep smiling, and that is exactly what he did. He didn't want people looking at him with sad eyes or offering him sympathy he didn't feel he needed. This is a key detail because it shows the mental toughness of a man who spent his life making sure everyone else was having a good time. There are still many rumors in the air about how much he suffered, but what many can confirm is that he never let the audience see the pain. And he would go out and perform, and the moment he was off stage, the exhaustion would hit him like a freight train. Nobody expected this to happen to a man who seemed so immortal, but the reality was that he was fighting a war every single day. Basically, Des was living two lives. On one hand, he was the record-breaking entertainer who held a Guinness World Record for the most hours of primetime television. On the other, he was a man in his late 80s, struggling to keep his hands still and his balance steady. Everyone's obsessed with the glitz of showbiz, but the private reality for the O'Connor family was much more clinical and quiet. Jodie stayed by his side through every tremor and every quiet moment of frustration. And that's putting it lightly, because Parkinson's doesn't just affect the body. It weighs on the mind of a person who is used to being in total control. The secret was kept so well that even some of his closest colleagues were blindsided when the truth finally came out after his passing in November 2020. See, The reason this matters is that it redefines his final decade of work. Every guest appearance and every song he sang was a victory over a condition that was trying to silence him. He passed away peacefully in his sleep, following a fall at his home. But the legacy he left behind is now viewed through a lens of incredible bravery. No, he wasn't just a singer and a comic. He was a man who chose to protect his fans from the harsh reality of his own mortality. The secret of his health was just the final chapter of a journey that started in the tough streets of East London. Humble beginnings. Of Des before he was the king of the chat show, Des O'Connor was just a kid from Stepney, trying to survive the London Blitz. He was born in 1932 to an Irish father and a Jewish mother, but a mix that he often joked gave him a unique perspective on life. During World War II, he was evacuated 65 miles, 105 kilometers, away to Northampton. This move was life-changing for him. Instead of the crowded streets of the city, he found himself working in a local shoe factory. For starters, this wasn't exactly the glamorous life of a star. He spent his days at a clicking table, which is a specialized workstation used to cut leather for shoes. But here's the deal. So even in the middle of a factory floor, Des couldn't stop performing. He would jump up on the tables and do impromptu song and dance routines for his co-workers. He was a natural entertainer, using the rhythmic sounds of the factory machinery as his backing track. Hands down, he was the most popular guy in the building, and it wasn't long before people realized he was meant for something bigger than leather soles and heels. Aside from his talent for comedy, he was also a gifted athlete, and he played as a reserve winger for the local professional team, Northampton Town Football Club. He used to joke that he was so fast on the field that he often forgot to take the ball with him. He never made it to the first team, but the fans there still consider him one of their own, even decades later. After his time in the shoe trade and on the pitch, he had to complete his national service with the Royal Air Force. It was there that his career really took a turn toward the stage. Say his commanding officer noticed how much he enjoyed entertaining the troops and actually forced him to participate in a talent show. It was the push he needed. Once he was demobbed, he hit the variety theater circuit, which was a brutal testing ground for any young performer. You have to understand how difficult the variety circuit was back then. You would travel hundreds of miles, 161 kilometers, every week to perform in front of crowds that weren't always friendly. But Des had a secret weapon: his likability. He wasn't the loudest comic or the best singer, but people just liked being around him. In 1953, he got a job as a redcoat at Butlins holiday camps. This was the ultimate training ground. As a redcoat, you had to be a singer, a dancer, a host, and a friend to thousands of holiday makers all at once. It was here that he met his first wife, Phyllis Gill, and really began to polish the all-round entertainer persona that would make him famous. By the late 50s, he was gaining serious momentum. He landed a high-profile spot as the host of the Des O'Connor Show for ITV in 1963. The show was a massive ratings smash. He had this incredible ability to make a connection with the camera that felt like he was talking directly to you in your living room. He wasn't just performing at the audience. He was having a conversation with them. And this ease of style led to international opportunities, including appearances on major American programs like The Ed Sullivan Show. He was becoming a global brand, but his rise to the top came with a very famous set of rivals who wouldn't let him forget his singing roots. One of the most fascinating parts of Des O'Connor's career was his long-running feud with the legendary comedy duo Morecambe and Wise. If you grew up in Britain during the 60s or 70s, you knew the joke. So Eric Morecambe would constantly make fun of Des O'Connor's singing voice. He would hold up a blank record and tell the audience it was the best of Des O'Connor. Or he would say that the air raid sirens were actually just Des O'Connor starting a concert. For starters, it was a joke that everyone was in on, but there was a deeper layer to it that many people didn't realize at the time. See, back in those days, then there was a bit of a divide between pure stand-up comedians and variety entertainers like Des. The comics often looked down on the song and dance men, thinking their own craft was more difficult. But here's the catch. Des was actually very successful as a singer. He had multiple top 10 hits, including the massive 1968 smash I Pretend, which stayed in the charts for 36 weeks. He wasn't just a guy trying to sing, he was a legitimate pop star. But Morecambe's jokes were so persistent that Des actually started to worry they might hurt his record sales or his reputation. But instead of getting angry or hiring a lawyer, Des did something brilliant. He decided to play along. He started appearing on the Morecambe and Wise show and letting them roast him to his face. Whenever he would try to start a song, Eric would walk out and stop him with some ridiculous excuse. By joining in the mockery, Des took the sting out of the jokes. He turned a one-sided attack into a beloved comedic partnership. It made him look like a great sport and an even more likable guy. The crazy part is that behind the scenes, the jokes did bruise his ego a little bit. He was a proud performer who took his music seriously, and being told you're a terrible singer by the biggest stars in the country isn't always easy to swallow. However, his generous spirit always won out. When Eric Morecambe suffered a major heart attack in 1968, Des actually went on stage and asked his entire audience to pray for Eric's recovery. When Eric heard about this later, he stayed in character and joked that he heard 6 or 7 people actually did it. This dynamic was a masterclass in public relations. By refusing to be pompous or defensive, Des became even more famous. His music career actually flourished partly because of the jokes, as people would buy his records just to see if he was really as bad as Eric said. He wasn't. He had a smooth, pleasant voice that appealed to millions of people. He eventually moved into the next phase of his career, which would see him become the most trusted man on late-night television. He was about to transition from being the target of the joke to being the man who held the microphone for everyone else. Master of the interview. In the late 70s, Des O'Connor found his true calling as a talk show host. And Des O'Connor Tonight began in 1977, and it completely changed the landscape of British television. Originally airing on the BBC before moving to ITV, it became a Tuesday night ritual for millions. At its peak, the show pulled in 19 million viewers. To put that in perspective, that is nearly 1/3 of the entire population of the United Kingdom at the time. He had a relaxed, effortless style that made celebrities feel safe, but he also had a sharp eye for new talent. Thus, beneath that easy charm, some people think there was a much bigger plan happening. While the public saw a harmless singer, people in the business have long whispered that Des O'Connor was the ultimate gatekeeper of British culture. The theory is that his nice guy act was a carefully built shield. By letting himself be the butt of every joke for decades, he made himself look like he was not a threat to the people in power. And this allowed him to build a media empire that decided exactly what the British public found funny for over 40 years. He was not just a host, he was a filter for the whole country. Des O'Connor is likely the man who brought some of the biggest American comedy names to the British public. Long before they were famous, people like Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno, and Gary Shandling all got their first big break on Des's couch. He had a rule about picking guests. He did not just want the biggest names. He wanted the funniest people. He would often let a young comic do their act and then bring them over for a chat, giving them instant respect. This focus on American talent has led to one of the wildest theories in television history: the Atlantic Bridge idea. Some people think Des was not just looking for talent, but was actually part of a secret group trying to make British and American culture the same during the Cold War. It was by hand-picking which American comedians were seen by 19 million British viewers, he was helping create one single Western way of thinking. The Des test was more than an audition. It was a way to check if a person was safe to show to the world. If a New York comic could pass the test on Des's couch, they were ready for the rest of the world to see. What most people do not realize is how much work went into making that show look easy. And Des was a perfectionist who obsessed over the timing and the flow of every interview. He was the most hard-working entertainer on television for a reason. He lived for the stage. But this obsession came with a high cost to his personal life. Des was married 4 times, and he was always very honest about the fact that his career usually came first. His first 3 marriages ended in divorce because he was never home. He was always in a studio, on a plane, or in a theater. The toll of this lifestyle led to another rumor about how he stayed looking so young. Des seemed to age much slower than other people his age. Even in his 80s, he had a deep tan, a full head of hair, and an energy level that matched men half his age. In the top circles of show business, there have always been whispers about secret health treatments. Was Des O'Connor using special medicine that was kept hidden from the public? First marriage to Phyllis Gill lasted 6 years. His second to Gillian Vaughn lasted 22 years and produced 2 daughters, Tracy and Samantha. His third to Jay Roofer lasted 5 years and gave him another daughter, Christina. And it seemed like he might never find a balance between his work and his home life until he met Jodie Brooke Wilson in 1992. She was a hostess on a game show he was working on called Take Your Pick. Even with a 39-year age gap, they liked each other immediately. People definitely questioned the age difference, but for Des and Jodie, it just worked. They were together for 17 years before they finally got married in 2007. During that time, Des became a father again at the age of 72 when their son, Adam, was born. He often said that being an older father gave him a second chance at life. He was more present and more patient than he had been with his daughters when he was at the height of his fame. However, the timing of having a son so late in life has also been studied by people who follow the legacy theory. This theory suggests that Des, knowing he was getting older and that television was changing, he wanted to make sure his name lived on through a new generation. It was a move that kept him in the news and gave him a family man image that protected his brand during his final 10 years on screen. He was finally happy, but the shadow of his secret health battle was just around the corner. Des O'Connor continued to work well into his 80s, appearing on Countdown and performing live specials. He followed a simple plan his entire life: walk on stage, talk to the people, and sing a few songs. It worked for 60 years. But by 2017, the Parkinson's diagnosis was a reality that he could no longer ignore. He and Jodie decided that the best way to handle it was to stay quiet. He did not want the disease to be the first thing people thought of when they saw his face. This decision to stay silent has started a theory about the industry mask. In the world of big television shows, a star's health is a huge money risk. Some believe that Des was forced to be quiet because of his contracts. If he had told the public about his illness in 2017, the cost to ensure his live shows would have been too high to keep going. He had a huge responsibility to keep his public image perfect. To keep the show running and his staff paid, he had to pretend the shaking was not happening. He was trapped by his own success. Des O'Connor's secret shows us that we never truly know the battles people are fighting behind their smiles. Was he right to keep his diagnosis a secret from his fans for so long? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look into a legend's life, please like and subscribe for more.